Welcome to the Thursday, as we like to call it around here, the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. That storm wasn't too bad, was it? I heard a plow last night. Looking out the window, and we had just a dusting, at least in my neighborhood, of snow, and there was a plow grinding the blade down the road, and I thought, is this going to be worse than I originally thought? But turns out it wasn't. And there was a little bit of snow on the vehicle this morning, and I had to kind of clean the windows off. But other than that, it seems that we have escaped, and we're looking at a warm day today. In fact, some here around the radio station didn't even bring their winter coats with them today. So maybe a wishful thinker as we get through the last days of the dog days of February and into to March, as the saying goes, right? So the other sort of a shoe to fall, and that's a full pun intended, is that I took a walk out from the radio station today to go on a search for windshield washer fluid, which is in short supply from what I understand, at least where I went. Not a lot of it around, at least at that store. I'm looking across the street at the Esso, and it looks like there's some there. But where I went, it was sold out, almost. I imagine there's a rush on it now with all of that stuff coming up onto your windshield. Anyway, took a walk around Yonge and Roby, part of the North End, and I'll tell you what, the sidewalks here are treacherous, to say the least. I know the sidewalk plows are doing their job, and I know that we're still kind of cleaning up from our storm earlier this week, and I know that there are priorities when it comes to sidewalks all the way down to Tier 3. All of that being said, with the warmer temperatures and the cooler nights and the melting that's happened yesterday, we're going to see a lot of melting today. There's, in fact, a chance of a shower in the forecast, so that's going to even create more. There's standing water in a lot of places, right? If you're crossing the street on the corners, there tends to be puddles there. There tends to be puddles in the holes that have been punched through the snowbank at the crosswalks, and the sidewalks themselves are quite slick in some areas. So if you're out there and you're walking around or using the sidewalks, take heed, as they say, as it's wet out there, and the salt that gets put down on there, and they have put salt down on it, you can see it and you can feel it under your feet. But when it gets this much melt and we get a little bit of rain, it starts to wash away, right? So, and then it freezes overnight and we create this icy condition. I saw a couple of the people right out here on the sidewalk in front of our radio station at Young Tower slipping and sliding down the sidewalk this morning. So just a word of warning if you're out there to be careful. Well, the fallout from the provincial budget continues, right? I said this on Tuesday in the immediate aftermath of the delivery of the Blizzard budget, as it's being called, is that these documents are large, and there's a lot of things that are involved in this budget particularly. And as we learn more and we're digging more into it, we're learning more and more little facets of this budget, particularly when it comes to budget cuts. It looks like, to me, at least with my rudimentary math and a couple of different media organizations and unions tend to agree, we're looking at about $130 million in grants and funding cuts that have been reduced from the budget. And we talked yesterday, some of that, of course, was some of the 12 museums that have had their doors closed as a result of this. That's about half of the museums in Nova Scotia that are being shuttered as a result of these budget cuts. We're hearing the impacts of other funding reductions and cuts in different areas across the province. If you were listening to the news here on the radio station this morning, you heard that the program that was launched a few years ago to get to school-aged children onto transit for free, the provincial portion of that is being slashed. Sam Austin, the city councillor, saying that the city may not be able to afford to keep that program running. I know that some of you have come to rely on that for your kids to get around, and I wonder if it has an impact on busing, on school busing, and if it has an impact on people's being able to go to work because their kids are able to take the bus to go home, and that throws the whole logistics circle out of whack, right? It's still on, as I understand it. We'll dig into that a little bit deeper today here on the program. to see what that means and if the city can afford to keep that program going. I know that many of you have told us on the program that it was a good program to introduce kids to transit and try to make them transit users, try to have that become part of their habit. So when they get older, that it just is what you do. You just get on the bus and you go about your business, even though we know all the problems with Halifax Transit these days. Also, some more funding cuts that have come to the surface. Some of the funding reduced for the mental health programming that was created in the aftermath of the mass shooting here in Nova Scotia. That is supports for people impacted by that. That's seen some cuts as well. And the list it goes on and on and on. Many different organizations are now starting to realize that they're part of this document. I think it was 11 pages of cuts or reductions. Universities, healthcare. There was some reductions in natural resources that we've talked about before. There have been reductions in justice, which is interesting. I'm wondering where those cuts are going to go. Is it going to the jails? I hope not. They're already complaining that there's not enough staff to go around. Some other organizations are seeing their funding cut as well, and one of those organizations, or one of those groups of organizations, is that of the publishing industry here in Nova Scotia. We know that Nimbus and Formac are two big publishers that we see books in the bookstores that give access to Nova Scotia and to Atlantic Canadian authors to get their works out there to the public. They're seeing some slashes. We'll talk to a couple of people involved in that industry and what it means moving forward a little bit later in the show today. Lots of cuts. $130 million worth. Now, if you count the $95 million, that's the number that's going around with regards to the public service cuts that we've been talking about this week, right? 5% in the public service, 3% more in the broader public realm and to the crown corporations over 5 years to about 30% of the public service. $95 million is the number that's kicking around there. So if you add those two together, we're about $220 million in cuts, and still the province's budget is $1.19 billion in deficit. Interesting times ahead, I think, folks, as we roll along here. You've no doubt heard the news or read the stories about some of the rather appalling incidents that have happened in the minor hockey system here in Nova Scotia over the last month or couple of months, and beginning at the end of last year. We heard the stories earlier this week of a pair of 14-year-old kids who have now been charged with some serious offenses, including sexual assault and sexual assault with a weapon, in connection to an alleged hazing incident that happened in the Truro area. And then we heard today or yesterday that we saw a hockey game in Musquodoboit Harbor that was stopped early by a young referee who was the target of what are being described as hate-related taunts. A charge has been laid. I think the person charged is a 39-year-old that was charged in connection with that. We talk about hockey here a lot on the program. We know it is our national sport, at least our national winter sport. Canadians of all shapes and sizes participate in that sport. It's wildly popular. We just had an Olympic tournament where we watched the very best in the world compete, including a team from Canada. We talk about the on-ice product. We talk about some of the problems with the on-ice product, be it talent levels in different positions. You know, there's a lot of discussion about goaltending. There's lots of discussion about defense and the way that we're generating these kind of players for hockey. But if we're going to have a discussion on this, I think we have to have a broader discussion about hockey and hockey culture in this country. Right? We saw the trial in London with regards to the junior hockey team. Of course, there was exonerations there. There's still an investigation underway into an incident that is alleged to have happened here in Halifax. That's been under investigation for a couple of years. Rick Westhead, who you heard on the program here talking about it when in his book, that he's currently on a tour for and is still waiting to hear from Halifax Regional Police about that investigation. And then we hear these incidents. This hazing incident isn't the first time, right? And this incident now, and then we hear the incidents of referees being abused at hockey games by spectators and parents, coaches being abused by parents, verbally and sometimes physically. If we're going to have a broader discussion about hockey in Canada and where we go as we move into 2026 and forward, I think we have to have a discussion about hockey culture. And I know that hockey organizations like Hockey Nova Scotia have statements. They have rules on the books and say that this is unacceptable behavior, and that obviously is a step. But it still happens. And this hazing incident, folks, was 14-year-old kids. I think that discussion is worthy of having. Don't forget, 11 o'clock today, we're going to do the open hour. We're going to delay it just a little bit because we will have an opportunity to sit down with the mayor of HRM. Andy Fillmore will be in studio for the first little bit of the 11 o'clock hour today to go over some of the things that we've been discussing this week. And that includes his motion to take a 7% reduction in staffing cost. That was rejected by council, and his most recent motion on Tuesday, taking a $6 million chunk out of the budget for the Halifax, the environmental program here in HRM, which was soundly defeated by council. Some councillors saying that the previous motion, the 7% motion, was one of the worst motions that she had ever seen. There's a rift at council now. We're going to dig into that. We'll talk to the mayor about how we move forward and how we go about doing business as we continue to face what he's called 11.2% increase in property taxes. Andy Fillmore will be here just after 11 o'clock. Time for us to take a break, but when we come back, new budget attacks local Nova Scotian publishing industry. The CEO of Formac, Jim Lorimer, and the manager over at Nimbus, Terrilee Bulger, will be joining us. You are listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in a minute. Welcome back to the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand, and we're continuing our focus on the provincial budget that was delivered on Monday, and we're starting to see what the impacts of some of the decisions made by the finance minister and by extension, of course, the premier of Nova Scotia are having on different organizations and services and groups that have now been impacted by seeing some of their funding, if not all of it, cut or reduced as a result of this budget. And one of the areas that is seeing a significant cut is that in the publishing industry. I got this email to my email box yesterday. It says, yesterday, which would have been Wednesday, the publishers in Nova Scotia received a letter informing them that the new provincial budget is eliminating the Nova Scotia Publisher Assistance Program. This will devastate the local writing and publishing community and slash the number of locally authored books that are published. This decision particularly shocking as it comes just 3 days before the end of the Nova Scotia Loyal Book Pilot Program, which was a government initiative to encourage people to buy and read books by local authors. They're investing money with one hand and then removing it with the other. To give us a little bit more perspective on this, the CEO of Formac, that's Jim Lorimer. Jim, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good to be with you.
And also on the phone with us, the manager of Nimbus, and that's Terrilee Bulger. Terrilee, how are you?
Well, we're still in shock here, we have to say.
I guess I'll start with you, Jim. How important was this funding to getting those books onto shelves that people can consume?
So publishers are a little bit like film people. To publish a book, you look at all the possible sources of revenue that would pay the cost and make it a viable project. So we put together what we think is going to happen in sales, and that's the most important thing. and then we look at what the grants that we get, both from Ottawa and the province, can contribute to the project. So what this decision means is that all of a sudden, a major source of funding for new projects disappears. And so what that means is that there are quite a lot of books. In my case, it would be about half the books that we're publishing every year. There are quite a lot of books that, that we would have published with the funding we have published in the past with this kind of funding that we won't be able to publish. And that's not great news, not good for us, but it's not good for writers. It's not good for book readers either.
Terrilee, you're obviously in the same situation as Jim is. You don't have to look very far in a bookstore to see a Formac book or in your case, a Nimbus publishing book.
Yeah, well, exactly. Jim, said exactly the same thing, that situation that we're in. We've been already hit by cuts, really, from the province when they changed our program to the Publisher Assistance Program out of the Creative Industries Program. So we're already kind of operating at almost half of the grants that we had a few years back, and we've, that had a huge impact. We cut everywhere we could, and now we're just left in this situation where there's nothing extraneous left to cut except for new projects and other operating costs. So it's quite a devastating blow.
Jim, you said the number of books published now will be about half of what it would. So what kind of numbers are we talking here?
So in my case, it's from 15 down to 8 or 9. Terrilee's numbers are a lot bigger.
Right. Terrilee, how many books are you going to have to say no to now?
We haven't worked that out yet because our whole team hasn't been able to kind of meet about all, what the direct impact will be. But in any sort of given year, there's about, 120, maybe 100, maybe a little bit more than that, books published by Nova Scotian publishers by Nova Scotian authors. And, for sure that will, I don't know if it will be half, but it will certainly be, a fraction of what that was.
I'll ask both of you the same question, and I'll begin with you, Jim. With this funding cut, I think it was $700,000 across the board. Does this put, Jim? Does it put your company in jeopardy?
No, and that's because of what I said at the beginning. That
right.
The way we work is it's a combination. It's just like the film business. You have to put funding together from every possible source for every new project. So less funding means fewer projects. Actually, I just to make it sort of better, to make it clearer about what this means, I was looking at the list of books we published in the last little while, and examples of books that probably wouldn't be published. So, for example, this past fall we published Rick Grant's book Broadside, which is a great book about a completely forgotten incident in Halifax Harbor during the Second World War. Well, it took quite a lot of money and time to work with Rick to get to a published version of that book. And I know that, absent the Nova Scotia support, we would have looked at that project and said, we just can't afford to do that. There are other examples, too. Like another great one is we did a novel by Gloria Wesley for teen readers. And the title of it was Shovels Not Rifles. And it's about a fictional, black young man who joins the No. 2 Construction Battalion in the First World War. And and we worked for, I think it was 3 years with Gloria to go from a first idea to a finished book and then get it out there. And again, that's an example of the kind of thing that without the provincial funding, it just wouldn't be financially viable to do a project like that.
Terrilee, will Nimbus be in trouble because of this cut?
Well, we're in the same boat. There are lots of other sources of revenue for us, but like I said, we just don't have anywhere left to cut. So there, the other issue with what Jim is talking about, when you have 45 books coming out in a year, and you just find out halfway. Right. We're going into the year. For us, it's halfway through our year that the funding is cut. We're already too far down the road with most of our projects to kind of back off on them. So, like Jim said, well, these projects are 3 years sometimes, right? And now this last little chunk of time where we spend a lot of money on printing and, other production costs that, we've already committed to, they've already, gone through all the 3-year process. It's really hard to pivot away from that, without any notice at all. So that's, that's where it's the trickiest thing, because we pivoted. We used to do about 60 books a year when we had more funding from the province, and now we're down to about 45. So without this funding, we'll probably go back down to about 30 books a year, and the other big cut will be reprinting older books that authors rely on for their revenue stream, because they usually sell every year, but we just won't be able to afford to reprint and pay royalties and all those things on books that we haven't had the big commitment to get the book out right now. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
It certainly does. Terrilee, I enjoy going to a bookstore. I know many that are listening do enjoy going to a bookstore, and it's I've seen a noticeable shrinkage in shelf space for local authors and for Nova Scotia written and produced books. With this cut, I mean, it's got to be a competitive world just to try and get these things into the stores, right?
It's been really hard the last few years, ever since COVID. Just getting anything sold. We've also lost a huge chunk of our American market with the tariff uncertainty and all the uncertainty down in the U.S. So for us, our U.S. sales are down by 80%. And I know Jim's probably had a similar situation. So, we're losing revenue streams all over the place. And, being able to compete with publishers across the country who also still have funding is another huge hit, because we're on the same playing field. It's harder enough being in Nova Scotia and trying to get the attention of the book buyers in Ontario or beyond, but they all in Ontario they get about twice as much funding, the publishers, as we get already, and now 100% times more. Right. So it's just another competitive disadvantage that we have to deal with.
Jim, we're just about out of time. Your message to authors out there who are perhaps working on something now is?
My message is we're going to turn this around. If people out there, like the books that they see in the bookstores from Nova Scotia authors, we know the bookstores love the books. The chain is, in spite of what you said about shrinking shelf space, they do, they really work hard to make our books visible and put them out there. I think the message is that with people saying, we love Nova Scotia books, we want to keep them coming. I think, the good thing about Tim Houston is that when he makes a mistake, he's often open to hearing what people have to say and changing his mind. So I'd say to authors, and I'd say to everybody, let the Premier know, let the MLAs know that they really want to see more great Nova Scotia books, and the way to do that is to put the funding back.
Jim Lorimer, Terrilee Bulger, appreciate your time, and keep us in the loop, will you?
Yes, we will, and thank you for having us.
It's a part of culture. It's a part of keeping our history alive. I mean, just taking a look around the industry that I work in. I mean, Rick's published 3 books, and Steve Murphy's got a book out, and Rick Grant, as you mentioned, has a book out, and John Tatry has books out, and it gives people here the ability to tell Nova Scotian stories, I think, and that is going to be significantly reduced with this budget cut. We're going to take a break. When we come back, most Atlantic Canadian provinces recording a population decline at the end of 2025. Senior researcher and director of major projects for the Atlantic Economic Council, Patrick Brannon, will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Glad you're with us here on a Thursday, or as we like to call it, Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Been a lot of discussion about the budget, right? And about population as of late when it comes to the affordability crisis, when it comes to the housing crisis that we're experiencing, particularly here in HRM. Many raising eyebrows and raising concerns about the plan to increase the population, to double the population here in Nova Scotia. But it appears that the population boom that we've seen here in Atlantic Canada, at least for the last little while, is coming to an end. This article comes to us from the Canadian Press, and it reads, Atlantic Canada's population boom has ended, with each of the four provinces losing residents at the end of 2025. And economic experts say that it's going to make it harder for provincial governments awash in red ink to balance the book. Stats Canada says Nova Scotia has added more than 100,000 people since 2020, becoming the first Atlantic province with more than 1 million people. New Brunswick added about 87,000 over that same period, while PEI has grown by 26,000, and Newfoundland and Labrador has seen 22,000 residents. StatsCan says the trend ended in the fourth quarter of 2025, with New Brunswick losing 1,000 people compared with the previous 3 months, the first decline since the beginning of 2017. Nova Scotia was down 1,400 in the same quarter, its first population loss since 2020. Please welcome to the show today for a little bit of perspective on this, Senior Researcher and Director of Major Projects for the Atlantic Economic Council, and that is Patrick Brannon. Patrick, how are you?
I'm great. Good morning.
This is is it a surprise that we saw this reversal in people coming to Nova Scotia?
Not really. I mean, we've seen signals early last year that the federal government was going to scale back immigration programs and non-permanent residents in the country. So we've been forecasting that it's likely to decline population at some point. Maybe it came a little bit faster than expected. Our flows from other provinces are also slowing, so that's bringing it down. So yeah, we did expect it to happen. We will likely see a decline next year as well.
How big a role did the federal government's reduction in the number of international students play in these numbers?
Yeah, the student piece is definitely a big part of it. We were seeing a big increase in international students to our universities and colleges. We saw also a big increase in the number of international temporary workers to support labor force vacancies as well. That's the big part that we needed to scale back. The immigration stream as well, direct immigration is down about 30% in Atlantic Canada, 35% in Nova Scotia. So all these factors are really part of it together. So the universities are hurting a little bit right now because of lower enrollments. And I'm sure we'll talk about budgets too. It's a big impact on provincial budgets.
Before we do, Patrick, you mentioned interprovincial migration is down as well. What are those numbers looking like?
Yeah, well, we had a big surge, obviously, after the pandemic. A lot of people moving from Ontario into the region. That has slowed quite a bit. We're still seeing a bit of positive flows into some cities, but generally it's fairly flat at the moment, or small increases compared to, we were looking at several thousand each quarter, shortly after the pandemic, 21, 22.
Birth rates are down as well, and I mean, obviously this is new. This is the first year we've seen this, but it wasn't that long ago that we were concerned that with low birth rates and low migration into the province that our population was shrinking. Are we in danger of that happening again?
Yeah, those natural rates of increase are growing. They're getting more negative over time as our population ages. So we do have to fill. If we want our population to grow, we need immigration. We need flows from other provinces. So we still have immigration, but it's at a lower level, and it's really not enough to sustain our population at the moment. And we're, as I mentioned, the interprovincial flows have slowed as well. So really immigration is going to be the driver of our population over the next few years. If we want to see it increase, we'll have to, have immigration bounce back a bit, down about national or Nova Scotia down about almost 4,500 from where it was last year.
Patrick, we know we've had a housing crunch here in Nova Scotia for the last couple of years, and a lot of people turning to immigration is the reason why we're not building enough houses quick enough to house people coming into the province. Are we in danger now that we've got all these projects underway that there may not be enough families to fill those apartments?
Yeah, we've already seen vacancy rates start to climb for apartments. I think right now there's a record level of apartments under construction in several cities. Halifax and Moncton are at record levels, and I think it's very likely that we'll see those vacancy rates go up, and that will likely bring prices down a little bit. But it's not going to fix affordability. We do need to hammer away at lower cost housing to make sure that we make housing more affordable. I do see, especially in Halifax, in Moncton, vacancy rates rising and having a lot more empty apartments over the next few years.
Patrick, we're obviously in the budget cycle right now. The provincial budget dropped on Monday with a $1.19 billion deficit and a bunch of programs being slashed, jobs being lost as a result of these deficit budgets that the province is in, with tax revenue being a significant portion of revenue and a population decline. Is it going to be tougher for Premier Houston to change the ink in the books from red to black?
Yeah, we've increased our spending in a lot of areas on infrastructure and healthcare, especially housing. And, the population decline is now a challenge. We did know this was coming, so, that there would be a slowing population. And unfortunately, we continue to spend a little bit beyond our means. And it's not unique to Nova Scotia. I think all provinces are in the same situation. We're trying to catch up on housing, catch up on infrastructure to support the growing population that we had. But yes, very much more difficult now. A slower population means less tax revenues from retail spending and from other taxation, provincial taxation, but also transfers from government are based on a per capita basis. And if our population's not growing, then it means our transfers from federal government are likely to slow in terms of their increase. They've been rising a lot over the last few years. There's a lot of touch points where a lower population is going to have a negative impact on your ability to balance your budget.
Patrick, the Premier openly musing about doubling Nova Scotia's population. I think it was by 2030 to 2 million. Is with these numbers, and I get it, it's early on, and I know this is a bit of a crystal ball question, but is it even possible?
Well, I think it probably was possible at the rate we were increasing back in 22 to 24 to do that. But I think we saw pretty quickly how difficult that really is to do if you don't have the infrastructure in place to make that happen. There were a lot of pressures on our health system and our housing system, and it's an aspirational goal. And I think it was a little further out. I think it was around maybe 2050 or something like that to reach that target. But it's probably not likely at this point. We will have to look at how immigration supports our growth going forward. We do need to improve our labor force. So growth is a good thing, but it has to be matched with the infrastructure to support its growth.
Patrick, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks.
That is Patrick Brannon, Senior Researcher and Director of Major Projects for the Atlantic Economic Council. When we come back, legal experts in the province raising red flags about the government's plan to increase fines and enforcement powers for illegal cannabis, which was announced this week. Professor Emeritus of Law at Dalhousie University, Wayne MacKay, your guest, after the break. All right, the Nova Scotia government tabling legislation this week to strengthen cannabis enforcement amid a crackdown on illegal dispensaries across the province. Justice Minister Scott Armstrong said the bill increases fines and allows peace officers like constables and even conservation officers to enforce cannabis rules alongside police. The bill also introduces a new offense for landlords who knowingly allow unregulated cannabis dispensaries to operate on their property. The provincial government issued a directive back in December for police to prioritize the enforcement of illegal cannabis and penned a letter to 13 Mi'kmaq chiefs asking for their cooperation. The directive has prompted criticism that Premier Houston's government may be interfering with law enforcement to target First Nation communities. Wayne MacKay is a professor emeritus of law at Dalhousie University and says he has concerns the province is expanding the crackdown at a time when there are questions around the potential treaty right to sell cannabis on First Nations land. I'm very pleased to welcome Professor MacKay to the show today. Hello, Wayne.
How are you doing?
I'm well. I guess the very first question, and whenever we talk about this, I get emails from people who say that there never really has been a decision from the courts on a treaty right to sell cannabis. Has there?
There has been one lower court, provincial court decision, which in that one decision, and Premier Houston used this when he talked about this crackdown initially, they decided that the evidence was not there for the judge to decide, that there was not enough evidence to actually make a determination on whether or not this actually fitted the kind of rights that are set out in the treaty. So there has been a case, but in that case, they really didn't deal with the larger issue of whether such a right exists generally. They did actually decide that in that particular case, they were not going to accept the challenge, but that was because not enough evidence was produced. So the short answer, that's the more detailed answer. The short answer is there really has not yet been a case. And of course, the argument is that the selling of cannabis would be included in the sort of general truck and trade clauses right in the treaties, and therefore should be part of that jurisdiction. There is a second, just very quickly,
sure,
second argument that the Indigenous people in Nova Scotia make as well, which is as part of their general constitutional guaranteed Aboriginal rights, there's a right for self-government of what in terms of what's happening on and in respect to reserves. So there's a kind of a couple of arrows to that bow, if you like.
Wayne, are we going to remain in this murky area with regards to this until we actually get a decision from the courts, or I would imagine from the Supreme Court? This is where it's headed, right?
I would think so. And to some extent, I guess the answer is yes, we will remain in that area. But as I commented on this in other settings, I think while this issue at least is not clarified, it's not a particularly appropriate time, in my opinion, to be cracking down and adding to the enforcement of the Cannabis Control Act in respect to the Indigenous people. But frankly, even more generally, while the government's insisting that there's a threat risk, the evidence doesn't seem to be particularly strong in supporting that, in that there hasn't been found to be contaminated cannabis and that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate thing to pursue. It may be, but I think the timing is certainly wrong. And whenever you're making decisions as a government that has significant effects on Indigenous people, there is a constitutional duty to consult and involve them as much as possible. So those are all problems. They're not the only problems with the crackdown on cannabis that's currently being proposed, but that's a big one.
Now that this crackdown is being proposed and likely, given the state of the government and its supermajority, will become law, Wayne, are we opening up Nova Scotia to legal processes, the lawsuits?
Well, I think, like me, we are. That in some ways now, because the crackdown is much more extreme in terms of higher fines and, as you said, targeting landlords as well, and not just that, but also minimum fines some minimum fines as high as 5 or 10,000 or more, that then have to be applied whether or not the judge in their discretion decide it's appropriate in that setting or not, at least in most cases. That's going to give a whole basis for challenge under possible charter violations. And there's some other sort of streamlining of the evidence which may lead to some charter challenges as well. For example, the presumption by appearance and odor that the substance is cannabis without having to do further testing is a somewhat unusual reverse of proof onus. Normally the Crown has to prove it is. Now, if it appears to be, then the other side has to prove it's not. And there's quite a few things as well. The expansion of the prohibitions that it applies to advertising in any way cannabis if you're not a licensed Nova Scotia Liquor Commission seller. So it's a pretty broad piece of legislation, even in terms of charter rights, even before we get into the large and contested area of Indigenous rights as well. So, and I think the other related point, I think the government really needs to make the case that the risks here are so high that they justify this high priority operation, which now even adds on not just the police, which resisted making it a top priority when this was raised earlier, but now other people like conservation officers and others that can be given that kind of authority by the Act. So that's a bit scary, and I'm not suggesting that these people are in any way like the ICE agents dealing with immigration in the U.S., but whenever you have officials enforcing laws and may not be fully trained to do that, you are possibly inviting problems.
Wayne, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. This legislation feels, just by some of the descriptors that you've given us this morning, feels like it's full of holes and likely doesn't have a whole lot of chance of standing up should somebody want to challenge it.
Well, I think they certainly are opening themselves to some pretty strong challenges, I think. That's for sure. But in addition, as I say, even from a politics or a sort of public policy point of view, I question whether it's wise to be putting this number of resources and energy and so on into doing this at this particular time. I mean, among other things, we're cutting budgets and focused on all the cuts. But yes, all of this, of course, adds some. Now, the flip side of that, which some perhaps cynical types might suggest, what partly is going on here, of course, is the government gets large revenues through the Liquor Commission in selling cannabis, and the illegal sale of cannabis is costing them money. So to be fair, the net financial effect on this might well be positive for the government. But if that's part of it, then I think that should be clearly indicated.
Usually boils down to money, right?
Yeah, well, that's many things ultimately do in this world, I'm afraid.
Wayne, as always, my pleasure, and look forward to chatting with you soon.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
That is Wayne MacKay. He's Professor Emeritus of Law from Dalhousie University and a constitutional expert, by the way. So no decision from a court on these treaty truck laws and treaty rights to sell cannabis. The province is cracking down on illegal cannabis, which is going to have an emphasis, I think, on Indigenous operations. Just lots of legal hurdles, lots of holes, at least according to Professor MacKay in this legislation. And I think we're going to sit back and watch the lawsuits start to unfold here in the not too distant future when it comes to this. Time for us to take another break here on the program. When we come back, of course, after the update, Blake's going to tell us what's going on in the news. And then when we come back, a little bit of a different open hour today. We're going to spend the first little bit of it in conversation in the studio with the mayor of HRM. Andy Fillmore will be here to bring us up to speed on what exactly is happening at council with regards to the budget and his motions, and what I think is a rift that is growing around the council table. Mayor Fillmore will be your guest when we come back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. I think the last time we did this, it was during our traditional open hour time, and I think I sold it as I had a special guest host of the open hour, and I'm not sure if Mayor Fillmore liked that because he's back here again.
I think I was your co-host for a very special hour.
But I thought you said we were going to switch sides, but I think maybe you should probably stay on that side.
I'm still confused by all your buttons over there. So yeah, I'm happy on this side, Dan.
Right.
Nice to be with you this morning.
Mayor Fillmore is here for an hour, folks. He's here to answer some of your questions, and I know you have many. I know I have several, and I would encourage you to pick up the phone and dial the numbers 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Very quickly before we get to the to budgets and such, you were at I think an important event earlier this morning that was happening was the Fairview Legion, right? Where we're marking the 35th anniversary of the end of the Gulf War.
That's exactly right, and Operation Friction, which was the op that involved Canadian Armed Forces over there. So it was a beautiful ceremony today at the Fairview Legion. Veterans from all branches who participated. There were over 4,000 service people that were over there. Very thankfully, no loss of life, of Canadian life during Desert Storm, but wonderful to have that commemoration today, and really warm feelings over there.
And there were several memories I have of the Gulf War, but one of the memories I have, and I know Rick used to talk about it a lot, was when the Navy ships were leaving Halifax to go to the Persian Gulf. There were thousands and thousands of people lining both sides of the harbor to wish them off, and that's one of those you'll never forget memories, right?
Exactly right, and that's why Halifax is the center of the observation of the 35th anniversary. It was HMCS Athabascan that right. left the harbor on that day, and some local veterans thought up this great idea, and they got the federal government behind it and the veteran community, and it's a big deal today.
It is, and it makes me. We were chatting off the air. I was just beginning my career in the reserves when that was happening. So, 35th anniversaries make me feel old.
Yeah.
Anyway, again, Mayor Fillmore here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. All right, we got to talk about it, Mayor Fillmore. We know that the budget process is underway. It's been. I don't know if confrontational is the right word. Maybe budget discussion should be confrontational. We've seen you at odds with a majority, let's say, of people on council over different items on the budget. We've seen that with motions that you brought a couple of weeks ago on Friday, and then again at council this week, you brought forward a motion to remove about $6 million out of the Halifax budget on a one-time deal. That certainly caught the ire of some of your colleagues around the council table. I guess the first question, Mayor, is the relationship between yourself and members of council. We've talked about it before. It doesn't appear, at least from an observer's perspective, that that's getting any better. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, Dan, you're hearing every counselor that you have on the show talk about what a difficult budget this is. We hear that every year, but I just want to begin to answer your question with some perspective on this. I was an HRM staff member. I was in the planning department for about 8 years, and that included the recession of 2008, and that was a time when I saw my colleagues disappearing, jobs were lost, programs were shut down entirely. There has not been as tough a budget in HRM since then until this year. So there is not a counselor, with the exception of Councillor Hensby, around that table who's had to deal with this kind of hardship in a budget before. So necessarily, these are difficult conversations, and I understand that. And I think at times people can start to conflate, their opinions on policy ideas with their opinions on people. And I always try to encourage people to remain focused on the policy and maintain decorum in the chamber. But I have to acknowledge these are difficult conversations. We're talking about significant change from the way we have been doing things, from the way we've had the luxury of doing things in the past because of the fact that we were in fat times.
A couple of Fridays ago, you brought forward a motion to Budget Committee that wanted staff to take a look at reducing the funding or the percentage by 7% of the staffing budget, and that one was received well. I had a pair of councillors in here on Monday. Councillors Cleary and Mancini were in here saying you kind of dropped it on them. You just came to council without giving anybody a kinds of heads up, and it put them kind of on the back foot. Is that I guess the question is that the proper way to do that, or is that the traditional way that you would bring a motion like that to council?
Oh, it's very typical. So, for one thing, I would say that as we get into the budget process, there have been many motions that had no notice whatsoever. Councillor Cleary himself dropped a significant motion with $40 million implications on the Friday afternoon at 2 minutes to close, just before the weekend. So I didn't fault them for that. Anyone's able to bring a motion anytime. The timing of mine was absolutely geared to the fact that was the day that the Human Resources Department was presenting their budget, and this was a question for the Human Resources budget. So that aligned in a very logical way. So there's nothing wrong with the timing or the way it was presented. Look, it's a joyless conversation to have to talk about staff, and I mentioned that I've been on staff myself. I hold our staff in the utmost regard. They are professionals. They're dedicated. And we're seeing the federal government, our provincial government, provincial and municipal governments across the country all having to reduce programs, cut programs, and look at staff reductions in order to keep life affordable and prevent skyrocketing tax rates. So this is a reality that we're in. It's uncomfortable. It's cyclical. We've been here before. We'll be here again. We're here now. And it's not fun.
Mayor, the most recent instances of this, the staff ask that you brought before a couple of Fridays ago, and then again on Tuesday, the $6 million reduction in Halifax. Some will suggest that you are doing what you said you were going to do, and you were trying to reduce this budget and offering up those difficult discussions. Others will suggest that you're building a case to go back to the premier to say, hey, look, I'm trying to do all this stuff. Council's not letting me do it. I need strong mayor powers. Your thoughts on that?
I'm completely focused on the budget and on keeping life affordable. I have not thought about strong mayor powers since the premier said no, however many months ago that was. So, yeah, my job right now is to look out for residents and their pocketbooks and listen to their voices and bring those voices into the council chamber.
Also took some criticism, Mayor, for an ask for your budget this year to increase by, I think it was $150,000 for an additional staff person. The optics obviously not looking good when you're looking at cutting significant cuts in different departments and then increasing your budget. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so context is important. The mayor's office has been static at 6 employees since 2013. That's 13 years of six employees. Meanwhile, the staff complement organization-wide at HRM has increased by almost 50%. Our operating budget has increased by 53%. Our population's increased by 115,000 people. And through it all, the mayor's budget has remained at 0.1% or 1/1000th of the operating budget of the municipality, and would, if we added, it would remain that way if I added the 7th employee. I also asked for this employee because people are more and more, as your listeners know, online. I've got to meet people where they are, and this is a communications position. People turn more and more to the internet to get their information about government, to have their voices heard to government. I take my connection to residents very seriously, and this would help me do my job better. Mayor,
is it appropriate to slash services and departments? That's eventually what's going to happen here when we try to knock that number down from 10.2 or 11.2, whatever it is, and not take the hit yourself and ask for an increase in your budget.
Well, first, as we're talking about staff, I want to make sure that we understand that we're not talking about any reductions to core frontline service staff like police, fire, and transit. I want to make that really clear. I consider the mayor's office a frontline core service as well. The way that we communicate with and listen to our public, we being City Hall, me being the mayor's office, is extremely important. That's a profoundly important thing. This position is 1/10,000th of the municipal budget. We need to be finding tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, and to be fighting over $40,000 or $50,000. I might offer one other observation, if I could, Dan.
Sure.
So my office is responsible to respond to all 16 districts, 520,000 people. The council support office similarly has to respond to 16 districts. They have 11 employees to help them cover those 16 districts. I have 7, and they would like to remove one from me. So my duties are significantly more complex than a councillor's. I have regional representation. I have diplomatic hosting, appearances at public events, and so forth. So it's curious to me that that then the council has now passed a motion to add staff to their office while taking away from mine. So it's a curious thing to compare side by side. But listen, I'll do the job with whatever resources I'm given and do my best to stay connected to people.
My last question for you, Mayor. Part of the budget debate, particularly about your office, came to light that the mayor's office spent $13,000 to have an outside agency write a speech for you. Is that normal process? Have mayors traditionally had outside sources write speeches for them?
Well, I'll say a couple of things about that. The first was that when I took over the office of the mayor, we had immediately 3 retirements and 1 person on leave. I had basically no staff in the office to help prepare for a major first time around the block state of the municipality address. Secondly, corporate communications. We do have a corporate communications department. They're restricted from supporting the mayor's office. I simply didn't have access to the communications people that we already have on staff. And third, we thought it was prudent to talk to a communications professional that had worked with mayors in the past, and that would bring some continuity. As the new guy, they could help us frame the way that such speeches go. So for those reasons, not having any staff, not having access to our corporate communications team, and wanting to hear the advice of someone who had worked with previous mayors on such speeches, that seemed like a reasonable thing to me. Won't do it again. I have my staff now, presuming I'm allowed to keep it. But in that moment, we felt we had to go that way.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Mayor Fillmore here, right through until the top of the hour. If you have a question or a comment for the mayor, perfect opportunity to do that again. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. Welcome back. My special guest host for the open hour today, and I seem to have capitalized the first segment, but that's okay. I hope I answered some of the questions that you've all been asking me to ask the mayor. But now let's go to the phone lines, Mayor Fillmore, and where are we here? Let us begin with Tim. Tim, how are you?
Not too bad there, Dan. A couple of suggestions.
Sure.
Civic numbers. As a retired first responder and a courier, the numbers on these houses and buildings are atrocious. You have white on white, black on black, red on black. They're hidden behind hedges or whatever. I propose that there be a bylaw that every building will have the blue and white numbering signs. I'm sure you've seen those around.
Right.
Attached to the house in such a way that it's not obstructed from the street, and if there's a hedge or there's an obstruction, then put on a post 10 to 15 feet back from the street and 4 to 6 feet high. That way it accommodates road clearing and snowfall.
Right.
So I'm sure all your first responders, couriers, mail people, cab drivers would appreciate it, and put it in that all new buildings must have this, and the old buildings have 2 years to comply. I bet you your police department, ambulance, everyone would love that. The second one is, in the summer they used to do the green bins every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Why not do it in the winter when there's no flies? It's cold, so there's not going to be as much of an odor. Less critters around.
Right.
To me, it would make more sense to do it in the winter than the summer. A couple of suggestions, and I'd like to hear the mayor's response.
Appreciate that, Tim. Mayor Fillmore, we'll start with the house signage.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for that, and thank you for your service as a first responder. I know that is a difficult job and often thankless, and anything that can be done to make the folks doing that job easier, I think, is worth a look. So thank you for that suggestion. It's a very interesting one. On the green bins, thank you. Look, any idea that can help us to reduce municipal costs and remove pressure from the tax rate is a good idea, as far as I'm concerned. I believe, however, Tim, in the winter we are already on a 2-week rotation for the green bins. And what has happened in the summer is we go weekly. So that's to deal with the smells and such. But always open to any ideas on how we improve that service and keep costs down. I appreciate the call.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Gloria.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Your question for the mayor, please.
I have some comments for the mayor. First of all, I want to talk about the Gulf War. It was me, as the alderman from Dartmouth, who arranged for the yellow ribbon tying on the Dartmouth side of the harbor. I ran around and put notices in all the military quarters, had 600 people down there leaving messages on a ribbon and tying them on the trees and waving as they went out. And when the ships came back, they came down and got their ribbons.
Bravo.
So
Bravo,
I made
Gloria.
the national news.
Yeah, I certainly remember it. Absolutely.
Well done.
Anyway, Your Worship.
Your Worship.
I want to first of all compliment you on your resilience. To be able to go in and sit down and try to work with so many members on that council is really a difficult task. And how you can do it, as I said, I compliment you. I watched that council meeting on Tuesday. I shook my head so much that I think I had whiplash at the end of it. When you go in there, it doesn't matter what motion you put forward. Coming from you, they have dug in their heels, and they have no intention of supporting you, except for Hensby and Trish Purdy. So, you can try. I left a message with Minister Lore's office this morning. We need help. I don't know what form that help will come. First of all, there should be an external audit in every department in HRM to purge out the additional staff that is not necessary. Imagine 30 solicitors, I'm told, in the legal department. City of London, Ontario, which isn't that much smaller, have 10 or 12. And besides having 30, we have outside legal firms tied up. So, and the other thing, Your Worship, you should be demanding, where is your CFO in all of this? Why isn't the CFO coming forward every quarter and telling you where you stand in your budget, advising you that you have to look for savings, you have to cut? Where is he? And where's the CAO doing the same thing? You don't wait till the end of the year and then say, oh, we need $40 million. So, that's a couple of the suggestions I make to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Gloria. And look, on the audit, this is something that I talked about during my election campaign.
Yeah, I know you did.
And I've been working, trying to get the support of the Minister of Municipal Affairs for over a year to support me in that, with some funding. I'm still working on that, but I think given the difficulty with this budget and the dire straits we're in financially, now more than ever, it's needed. So I appreciate that you reached out to Minister Laura today. That's a helpful thing to do, and I'll hope to be able to get some partnership from the provincial government so that we can have that very important audit to help us remove waste and duplication and improve efficiency and relieve pressure on the tax rate.
And this Stop the Tax movement now. The only way that is going to resonate with this council and with residents is for them to do a demonstration in the parade square, a peaceful demonstration with signs saying enough is enough. Stop your personal agenda and get on with the work. So I'll leave it at that, Your Worship, but stay strong and stay in there.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I appreciate that very much. Just on the Stop the Hikes, I think it's called. Yeah. There was a survey done, a poll that said that 3 in 4 HRM residents would like to stop the year-over-year tax increases at HRM and rein in spending, even if it means cutting services. So that's a very powerful message, and one that I'm trying to make sure that we factor into our debates. As we'll see how that goes, I guess.
The external audit, very quickly, we're almost up against the break here, Mayor. The external audit, would that not already be the purview of the Auditor General?
So the Auditor General has a certain mandate, and the external audit would go deeper. It would go into a much more thorough. I don't want to say forensic, but a much more thorough style of audit that would look at efficiencies and not just accounting. Is there duplication in multiple departments and that kind of thing? So we've seen the provincial government help out with the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, for example, in a not exactly the same but a similar kind of audit, and there is precedent for this. But I'll keep on trying.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Mayor Fillmore is here until 12 o'clock. Couple of lines open if you'd like to ask a question. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. Mayor Fillmore is here to the top of the hour to answer your questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Very quickly, before we go to the phone lines, an email question for you, Mr. Mayor. Something that I've raised here on the show a couple of times, and that is when we refer things at budget or even at council, when we refer things away to have staff study it. Is there a cost to that? And the reason I ask that is we know staff are there, and that's their job is to answer council. Part of their job is to answer council questions. But it just seems that we do a lot of staff reports, and people are asking if there's a cost that's associated with those.
Yeah, those staff reports happen during budget, but they happen year round as well. And our staff are busy; they've got plenty to do, and some of what they're busy with are routine staff reports. But a lot of what they're distracted by are extra requests for staff reports. So yeah, we I think that every time a councillor asks for a staff report that is not routine, we have to consider, we're distracting that staff group from their work to follow a trail of breadcrumbs into something else. And there are a tremendous number of outstanding staff. There's a long queue of backlog. So it's not just they don't get dealt with right away. There might be a couple of hundred actually behind the dam that are waiting to get dealt with, and that's a big load for a department to carry. In other orders of government, when after an election, it's called clearing the order paper.
Right.
All the outstanding legislation or staff reports just get cleared, and you start again. We had a conversation after the last election. I had that conversation with the then CAO. And we took a look at it, but there wasn't an appetite for it then. But it's probably a worthwhile exercise.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We say hello to Sue Utek. Sue, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. How are we?
Your question for the mayor, please.
Good morning, Sue. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, good morning, Mayor Fillmore. And listen, first of all, thank you for all your service. As a former counselor, I know it's hard to deal with, 16 type A personalities, and often in view of a staff report or in lieu of a staff report, just pick up the phone and call that person. Maybe you can save the taxpayer a few $1,000s.
Great advice.
So as you know, Mayor Fillmore, I represent the Spring Garden Area Business Association, and we've heard very little talk on the commercial tax rate. And I just want to know for the listening public that the commercial tax rate is 2.5 times the residential currently. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're sitting at almost 11.3 on the residential, and it looks like the commercial is coming in at 11. So that's my first question to you. And my second question is, I know there was approval by council to bring in an outside consultant to review department by department, and where are we at on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First, on the commercial rate, yeah, we of course we don't have any final answers until after the final week of debate next week. So far, just for folks listening, what the council has been debating so far for the last 3 weeks is putting a whole bunch of expensive things into what I would call a parking lot, and then we go, as you know, Sue. Next week we'll go into the budget adjustment lists, which is the name for that parking lot, the debate, and then we'll decide whether we're going to spend money on all those things or not in the end. And right now, if we say yes to all those things, we're at an 11.2% increase on the residential tax rate. And so on the commercial rate, similarly, we won't know the answer until we get through all of that debate next week. But my mission, like it is for the residential taxpayer, for the commercial taxpayer, it's to keep life affordable. These are employers. These are the people that make the local economy go around. They animate our streets and sidewalks, and they need to be we're operating in an environment that they can afford profitably and survive in. And the other question was on, Sue, remind me. Did Sue go away already?
No, Sue,
Council agreed.
sorry, Sue, go ahead.
Yeah, that council had agreed that you were going to hire an outside consultant for a department by department review.
Yeah, so this is the service review that was that came about as a result of a motion that I brought to the council over about a year ago. That's underway. It's a substantial piece of work. It is. I think we're coming up to having it delivered to us, Sue. It'll be this winter. I don't have an actual date for when it'll come before council, but I think that the consultants are tying a bow on it right about now, and we should see it very shortly.
Thank you, Sue. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. From Spring Garden Road to downtown Halifax. Downtown Paul McKinnon. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mayor Fillmore.
Hello, Paul. How are you? Nice to hear from you this morning.
Yes, good to hear you as well. Sue and I did not tag team this. I've got a completely different question from her, but hers was a good question as always. So I guess as we've been talking about, it's budget season here, and not only at the municipal level, but of course at the provincial level. And so we can blame Dan and kind of his media colleagues that all we hear every day is about cuts and cuts and cuts and kind of austerity measures. And so this is, and a lot of these cuts are potentially necessary, but it is really having an impact, we believe, on things like business confidence, which of course we've all worked hard to rebuild post-pandemic. So I guess my question or thought for you to reflect on, Mr. Mayor, is once we kind of get through the whole budget cycle and we've got a budget, if you can maybe kind of talk about what thought maybe you've given to between yourself and council, really kind of setting that vision moving forward, right, and kind of really rebuilding that confidence. There's a lot of great things that are happening in our city. As you know, the Downtown Halifax Business Commission has produced a downtown vision, which we're very excited about still. It does require a lot of investment. We believe it'll have a huge economic return. So maybe share some thoughts about kind of how to be that visionary in terms of moving forward. And it's something, Mr. Mayor, I would say that you've demonstrated throughout your career you're actually really good at, right? You did that as a city staff person. You did that as an MP. I don't know how you do it, but you're naturally an optimistic person, and you kind of project that. Maybe just kind of reflect on, once we get through the budget, how do we kind of rebuild that business confidence? Because right now, kind of all business is hearing about is cuts. Yeah, look, the first mission here, Paul, is we have to right the ship. And I don't want to add to the doom and gloom, but the city staff have projected that we're facing a compounded 50+% increase on the average residential tax bill after 4 years. And we're going to increase our annual debt service from 4% of our operating budget to 19% in 10 years. Those are untenable. Both of those are untenable. We've got to right the ship, and we will. So that's going to happen. And once we do, we'll return our gaze to the important work that you and I and so many others have been involved with for a couple of decades, which is making sure that people want to be in HRM, want to invest here, businesses want to start here, tourists want to come here. I'll tell you the bright spot for me on the future, Paul, is the Prime Minister's interest in defense and how that's going to have a disproportionate impact on a service town like Halifax, home to the largest Canadian Armed Forces base in the country, home to the Diana. I won't give you the whole list. All three branches of the service are here, and that this is going to bring hundreds and thousands of jobs to HRM, to Halifax and Dartmouth over the coming 10 or so years, particularly if we are lucky enough to earn the right to do the submarine in-service support, which will be like the impact of the Irving shipbuilding contract all over again. So this makes us special in Canada and holds out great promise that our economy will flourish once we right the ship here.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back after the break. Welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We'll try to get to as many calls as we can. Some of you have been holding for a long time. Lubitsa, how are you? Hello.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air with the mayor.
Did you say Lubitsa?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to talk to Mayor, please.
Sure, he's right here. What's your question for him?
Okay, Mayor, this is Lubitsa Borozan, and And I know you because 8 years ago, if you remember the accident on Herring Cove, you were in a car, and the lady was driving, and I remember I was down. It was a bad accident. The car hit me, and you were in a crowd, and I said, I know you. You're a politician. Do you remember that?
I don't remember you calling me out in a crowd, Lubitsa. It's nice to hear from you, though.
No, it wasn't out of the crowd. You were in the car.
Oh, in the car, you
with
said.
the lady that was driving. That's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that. But my concern is this. It's been 2 years. Access to bus services are going down. And that was even before tariffs. And nobody's... I never heard anybody talk about it. No councillor, no, not you, not Premier or Houston ever mentioning that. And I know he's improving health, but this is part of health too. You know, the middle-aged people are getting now. They're seniors, and we need. The population is growing, and we have less of these services. In fact, in the last few months, it's so bad that office sometimes is closed for the whole day. Here is one Saturday 2 weeks ago. Here's Access a Bus. Our working hours are 7 to 11 on weekends and holidays, 7 to 5. Our office is now closed. So, and then a couple of weeks ago, before that, during the week, it's the whole morning. I was calling 2 mornings in a row, and the phones were busy signal. They were not. Nobody was able to reach them.
Lubitsa, for the sake of time, can you ask your question, please?
Sure.
Your question of the mayor is?
Well, Lubitsa, I'll try to anticipate your question. I can tell you that Accessibus, I do get a high number of calls about customers concerned with the level of service with Accessibus. And I can tell you that Halifax Transit is in the midst of an Accessibus review. They're figuring out how to modernize and improve that project, that service rather. And that does involve, and I asked this question on the floor of council last week during our budget discussions with the director of transit, that does include listening to the voices of people who have lived experience using Accessibus. So if you were to drop me a line at mayor@halifax.ca, I could let you know more about what's happening with Accessibus. But overall, I would say we're taking very seriously that transit is a core service and one that we have to protect and not cut the service, not cut services. We have to make sure that we're directing tax dollars to that service by trimming the fat elsewhere. So, Lubitsa, it's nice to hear from you, and thank you for reminding us of the importance of transit.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We say hello to Eric. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
What I want to bring to your attention is, well, last I heard, it was on Dan's station here, that we had the same population on the street as we have people living in Mahone Bay. And it infuriates me that we're spending $80 to $100 million in bike lanes. Has there ever been any thought given to opening up trades training for the people that are on the street, and also to open up for those people that are addicted to help them out? The expert that Dan had on his show was Todd, actually. It said there's 30% of the people on the street are unfortunately addicted to substance abuse. The rest of the people are people sometimes that are actually working that are making $18,000 to $22,000. Just imagine if you took $50 million or $60 million instead of building bike lanes and open up trades training for these people. Then they could afford affordable housing because they're making half decent living with their trades. And just as you alluded to with the shipyards, you're going to need tradespeople, electricians, welders, all that kind of stuff. I just think that we're missing the boat, and we should put people first instead of bike lanes at present. I'd like to hear your comments on that, please.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate the question and the ideas. So I'm no mental health expert, but I do know that when people have purpose, they live happier, more fulfilling lives. And you're not the only person over the years who has suggested some kind of a program where folks who are on hard times, living on the street or living rough, could be brought into some kind of purpose like that. But I'm not a social engineer or a mental health professional by any stretch. I'm the guy that's got to run the city and leave health to the health department. But I appreciate also that you trying to bring a solution on how to pay for it. The bike lanes we have are expensive, and you would know that I've been doing my part, and so have a few other councillors in the chamber to try to bring down the cost of the bike lanes. They can be extremely expensive, up to $4,500 per meter, and we can do that for a fifth that cost or less. So I'll continue to try to figure out ways that we can complete our bike network, but at a much less significant cost, and put that money to other good things, perhaps like what you've suggested.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Mayor, the homelessness issue in HRM doesn't get a lot of attention these days, but it's still there. What's the city doing to help to continue the fight against trying to house people to get out of living rough?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving. We've got an incredible staff in our public safety department that manage this for us. It's evolving because as each month goes by, the provincial government is creating more opportunities for people to be indoors in supported environments. That's enabled us at HRM to start to close down encampments. So right now we've closed all but 2. And so if you think back 2 or 3 years ago, this is a significant difference. And it's important not just for the folks that are now getting support and help and are indoors, but it's important that we get the use of our parks and public spaces back, and people feel safe in their community. So I give so much credit to our public safety team. There are still the 2 encampments I mentioned. We have a plan in the public safety department to get to effective zero homeless population within 2 years. We're about 2 or 3 months into that 2 years already. But that's going to require ongoing partnership with the province so we can continue to have safe places for people to go. But the partnership's working great.
Let's see if we can grab one more call here before we're out of time. Albert, welcome to the show.
Yes, thanks for being on the air, but I must say, I find it rather ironic, some of your comments about preserving our parks and public spaces, and also the importance of tourism. The direction the city is taking is really in the wrong direction. We have our parks being infringed on by development. We've got parking lots and parking garages infringing on our public spaces. And tourism, well, one might have to ask you, why would tourists want to come? In 10 years, there won't be much for them left to see. Halifax is just turning into a massive demolition site, and tourism is important. It is our second largest industry. But people come here to see something left of other centuries of finer architecture and design. And there's no protection in this city for it, except other than a building here or building there. I think that I would like to have seen, ideally, the entire South End be given Old Town designation, similar to places like Lunenburg or Quebec City. But there's no such protection. And you've got this huge demolition project going on in the most attractive Victorian block, the one that's bounded by Spring Garden Road, Robie, and College Street. Why you have to put a huge monstrosity of an ugly high-rise there when it should have gone elsewhere in the city, namely in the auto dealerships of the North End, which should have been long ago moved to our industrial parks. So I think we'll have to give up any hope of tourism being an industry in this city. 10 years from now, there will be nothing for tourists to come and see except parking lots and high-rises.
Well, thanks, Albert. I agree with some of what you've said. I will note that our tourism numbers, we break records every year as we go into the future. There's no slowing down. Tourism operators are extremely optimistic that growth will continue, and as we carry on building out, the waterfronts on Halifax and on the Dartmouth side, as we welcome more cruise ships, as we have innovative tourism operators working out how to conduct business in the shoulder seasons in the spring and fall to lengthen that season. The future is very rosy for tourism. I will say I agree with you on how we can deal with the Kempt Road area. That really is the next frontier to build new neighborhoods up there, and there are studies and future planning underway to make exactly that happen. And we'll have to stay tuned and see how all that rolls out. But that's a huge future neighborhood right up there where you've identified.
Appreciate the call, Albert. Appreciate everybody who picked up the phone and dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. And most importantly, I appreciate the time, Mayor Fillmore, for spending an hour with us here. I look forward to it, and I look forward to your next visit.
I look forward to it too, Dan. Thank you very much. And by then, we'll know the tax rate.
We'll know the tax rate, and I'm sure it's going to be in single digits, correct?
I will not be pleased unless we're in the low single digits, and I hope that we can get there.
Appreciate it, Mayor Fillmore. And I appreciate everyone who called. We're going to switch gears here a little bit. We're going to take a break for the news on the other side of it. It is the last Thursday of the month. Can you believe it? We're there already. It's time for Dr. Jeff Goodall. If you have a question about your furry friend as we switch into March and spring, can I say it? An opportunity to have the veterinarian answer your questions. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Ask the vet after the news. Thursday of the month already, folks, and that means it's time for our regular visit with the veterinarian, and we're very pleased to welcome back to the show Dr. Jeff Goodall. Dr. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dan?
I am. I'll be happy when the snow's done, and I would imagine some of your clients would say the same thing.
Yeah, I believe last time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know a lot goes through the station here. I think I talked about winter pet care ad nauseum.
Right.
But, just to reiterate, now that there's melting snow and all the junk on the street, I'm talking about dogs now, but it does apply to cats, considering really having a clean towel by the front door, maybe a spray bottle of fresh water, just in a plant mister to clean those paws off from the salt and sand and debris, and wipe your puppy's belly, keep the underside clean as possible, maybe, let it dry and brush it out over a mat, just get that sand out of there, because the chemicals and stuff that are washing off our roads from our vehicles, dripping this, that, and the other thing, salt, all those things, those are kind of almost like microtoxins. They are to us as well, but obviously we're wearing shoes and hopefully not licking our feet, but you see where I'm going here. Never a bad idea to rinse off again, I have a new puppy now, 15 weeks old, and, we're taking her out for walks on the road, and she comes back pretty filthy this time of year. Am I advocating for boots for dogs? Yes, but it's too late now to, take your dog out and get them used to boots and get them on the road. We really need to introduce them to boots. Yeah, start now, but recognize by the time the snow melts is when your dog will be much more comfortable walking in boots and what have you. But just be really careful cleaning your dog's feet off and underbelly, because they're going to groom themselves and pick up things that maybe not now, but maybe later might be incidentally toxic to the liver and kidneys. Having said that, the thing I was thinking about today for a subject, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but had an interesting experience a couple of weeks ago of second opinion cases. And I just remind everybody out there that you can get a second opinion. Everybody wins, especially your pet. And I say this fairly often in the room because sometimes clients are doubtful or don't like the diagnosis or aren't comfortable with the diagnosis. Heaven forbid, maybe they're not comfortable with the practice or their veterinarian for whatever reason. Recognize, everybody out there, your pet records are your property. The veterinary business is in charge of keeping those records in one place, but you can move them at any time. There should be no fee. I've heard this starting around. I don't know if I believe it yet, but I've heard a few little chirps about that somebody wanted to move their records and there was a fee to put them together. I don't think that's fair. I don't believe it's appropriate. But let everybody know, just to let everybody know, your records are your property. And if you're given a diagnosis, and that not an emergency, right? If it's an emergency, you got to, dance with the one that brung you and keep with whoever it is. While the animal's in an emergency situation, you can call around other vets to see if they'll offer you an opinion. Probably not without the records. But if your animal, diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, a common diagnosis in cats, and, the medication's very inexpensive, and there's oral and topical options, and, these cats lose weight, they start drinking more, they act like they have kidney disease, and sometimes they do have underlying kidney disease as well. And this gets really expensive really fast. I just said hypothyroidism, inexpensive to treat. But if the disorder is affecting other organs, it can suddenly become expensive. And this is what we ran into recently, where a client was like, well, I was told it was going to be simple blood test, simple medication. And unfortunately, the blood test did come back positive, or if you will, for elevated thyroid hormone in the bloodstream. The veterinarian very correctly recommended medication. The client, basically the cat did well for a short period of time. I can't remember if it was 2 months or something. And then the veterinarian said, on a recheck, which was a very appropriate thing to do, let's check the weight, make sure the cat's responding, the hair coat is improved, the hyperthyroidism causes behavior changes. Let's make sure those are gone. The appetite's back under control. This cat was stealing food because hyperthyroidism makes them very hungry. And the veterinarian said, let's do some blood work, and the client kind of lit up, probably because, these animals, your animals are your babies. I hate to analogize with people, children, and babies, but let's be straight, the emotionality connection is there. And this client appears to have got pretty upset with, hey, you told me this was going to be simple, and now you're telling me I need to do this blood work. And, let's say base blood work is probably about $200. And the veterinarian and the person, I don't think they got into an argument, but the person certainly was argumentative. And this got into the record, is my point. And I think that's appropriate. If you have words with your medical doctor, your pharmacist, name it, chiropractor, and you're unhappy, I think it's fair for the practitioner to make a note, hey, owner is unhappy. Owner is discontented. If there's questionable words used, the veterinarian does have the right of quoting you, especially with the AI recording devices in the room now. You will be heard. And what's happened here is not only is the animal suffering, we are now dealing as sort of a second opinion on, I don't think those comments by the veterinarian are fair. That's a whole other discussion. But in the end, the client is correct. They can move their files. And please, if you have a concern, it's more important for your pet's welfare to get that second opinion. Last point, if you have an outstanding invoice, however, with that clinic that you were going to, trying to transfer your records out of, the clinic does have the right to ask you to pay your full outstanding balance before the records are transferred. So I just said they are your property. We are the keeper. We professional veterinarians are your keepers of your records. But if you owe the clinic money, you get into a gray zone. And so I would just pay the bill, get your records out of there because, hey, the bridges are burning. Let's get out of there and get to a new, clean slate and move on from there. So it was a very interesting situation of multi-layers. I just wanted to, in case people run into this or friends or family of listeners run into this, your records are your records unless you owe money to the practice. And if questionable language is used, it could enter into the record. And once it's in the record, you really aren't allowed to change it, and you're really not supposed to. And many of these software systems lock it down anyway. So if you are recorded saying something unkind, it could easily enter into the record.
Right.
But in the end, let's just be kind to each other. I used to finish the show with Todd, and shout out to Todd. I hope you're doing well. Be kind to each other. And I've forgotten to say that lately. Let's just be kind. Let's get our pets the care we can afford at the time limits that we can. And I guess I'll finish on another case up in Cape Breton. A friend of the family, pet's toe was bleeding on Saturday. I think it was Saturday afternoon. Ended up at Emerge, whatever emergency vet was there. $400, and they were like, I don't believe this. It's $400, and it's just a toe. And I'm like, yeah, but it's probably a $200 emergency fee, then a $100 exam fee, and then the bandage material. Unfortunately, I can sort of see this going to, $300 plus tax pretty quickly. But the client, that person's like, well, I want to transfer my records. And I'm like, okay, cool. But you can't transfer them until you pay that accounts receivable.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. I mean, the cat's fine, by the way. Like it was done. There was no medical malfeasance. But I think getting a second opinion on this toe is a great idea. And I'll leave it at that.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Dr. Jeff is here for the next hour to answer your pet-related questions, and we'll get right to the phones after the break. All right, welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's Ask the Vets, our monthly sit-down gathering, whatever you want to call it, with our veterinarian, Dr. Jeff Goodall. And Dr. Jeff, we've got some phone calls here, so let's go to the phones right away, and we welcome Heather to the show. Heather, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Your question for the doctor, please.
Okay, so it's about dental health. So I've been listening to Dr. Goodall for a while, and so I have a 17-pound chug, and he's 5 years old, and I'm obsessing about his teeth. So I've bought the recommended, what Dr. Goodall recommended, the CET enzyme, and I brush his teeth with that. I've also gone out and bought probably a lot of gimmicks, Supports Fresh Breath, the spray, and then the green cleaning powder. And I'm just wondering, is bad breath associated with dental health? And is there anything else than brushing his teeth or paying to have him put under and have his teeth scaled, which we know when you put an animal under, there's risks. Yeah, so I guess my question is there anything that I'm missing that I can do to get rid of a little bit of tartar and the bad breath?
So that's a pretty deep question. Did you say it was a cat or a dog, by the way? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, he's a pug chihuahua.
Okay.
So he's like,
so right away, your breed... Okay, so right away, that breed is going to be much more predisposed to early dental health problems, even in spite of great dental care. And so where I'm going is we have to consider the genetics and the physical makeup of the dog. So you've got a partially snub-nosed dog. Most of those, I can't see your dog, but most of the teeth in a pug, even a chihuahua, can suffer from what we call crowding, where the teeth, instead of being in that nice straight line down the jawbone, we call it herringbone. They turn, they rotate. Some of them actually grow out into the palate, and the body just doesn't deal with that very well. So first off, kudos for you and anyone else out there listening. Brushing the teeth is the gold standard. Yes, if you're going to ask, my puppy gets her teeth brushed every day. At 15 weeks, she's now looking for it as part of her morning ritual. And if you can start that with any dog, especially 5 years and under, do it now, please. I am biased. I admit it when I try to remember I have one. CET product is it is the best. There are others, but it has the requisite certified amount of dental tartar control enzymes in it, very comparable to Crest toothpaste, but without the foaming agent and without the strong flavors. Okay, then, brushing once a day is the gold standard. Certainly 3 times a week would be the minimum. If you're brushing once a week, you may as well not bother. It's better than nothing, but really you're going to get dental disease. I think the caller's question is, what else can I do? And I'll get to dental cleaning because that's sort of the last resort, isn't it? The powders, the greeny powder, the fresh breath, I think it's called. Look, they're not going to cause harm as far as I can tell, but I haven't had too many owners say this makes a huge difference. Now, there's a caveat here. Every once in a while, I am pleasantly surprised when I look at a pet's mouth, and we take pictures in our clinic of teeth all the time, just because it enters the pet record, and we can tell a year later, hey, we called it a 0 tartar last year, and now there's 2 over 1 year. And the client's like, are you serious? And I go, yeah, let's look at today's picture, and let's look at last year's picture. Something went wrong. Because if the pet's health, organs, digestion, if they become questionable or fail even, yes, you will get weird breath smells. So that's the answer to your first question is, I think I heard, is halitosis a sign of internal ill health? It sure can be. Most of the time it's not. But the other side is I'm pleasantly surprised by some clients who say, I'm not doing a damn thing. I don't have time. And I look in the mouth, and this is a 5 or 6 year old dog, and there's no tartar. And I'm like, okay, that animal, just like some people, has a natural dental defense system working with the flow of saliva, the acidity of the saliva, whether they're taking, there's some evidence that taking antioxidants in a cranberry, a blueberry, things like that can help with the overall oral health and body health. And I'm pleasantly surprised. And then we have clients who, have a 3-year-old pug or a Chihuahua, usually it's the smaller breed dogs, with some malalignment of the teeth, and the teeth are horridly affected by tartar already. I do know that there are some groomers and some lay people offering dental cleaning. I'm not going to be, too deep into that, other than to say that they are certainly able to scrape the tartar off. I know there are some dental hygienists at home that scrape their dog's teeth. But getting a fluoride coat on there, getting the tooth sealed, polishing is a little overrated, but sealing the tooth after the scraping is recommended. But those people do not seem to be as good at it, in my experience. I'm not saying they're wrong, but those services are sort of a stopgap. I still come back to, if you're having to go to a groomer to get your dog's teeth done, it's like going to your barber and asking for a manicure and total body wash, whatever. Some do it, but most are not, and no one can be very good at everything, including veterinarians. Yes, you heard me say it. But a combination of everything you're doing, Mom, is perfect. I've had clients say hard kibble is better for teeth than soft food. Studies are very clear. There's no difference at all between hard food and kibble. Chewing on certain things like greenies may help. It doesn't actually seem to be clinically relevant, but there are some products. You look for something called the good Lord, what is it? VOCH, I think it is, the Veterinary Oral Health Care Council or group. If that little VOCH, whatever it is, seal is on the product, which it is, for example, on CET and on some products like Greenie powder, then it has been clinically proven to have some effect. Is it going to have the total effect? I don't know. It's so individual. And I'm sorry to rush through this. The next step is dental cleaning. Look, your vet should be, and more than likely is, in your pet's corner more than your corner. And what I mean by that is, if they're saying, I think this dog's teeth warrant a cleaning, and especially if they've taken pictures over the years, you should basically put in, everybody listening, please put in a reminder every 2 months to take a picture of your dog's teeth from side to side, and maybe the front incisors, and just keep a file. And then if your vet says, hey, it needs a cleaning, you can go, hold on, last year this time this is where it was, and This year it's here. Are you telling me I absolutely have to have this? Most vets are in your pet's corner and are going to say, yes, here's why, especially if there's halitosis or bad breath or other ill health conditions, and a cleaning may be warranted. The risk is what I think the caller brought up, and I'm just going to address that quickly to say most vets are extremely responsible, using the proper anesthetic protocols, using registered technicians to monitor the anesthesia. Okay, I'm not going to say anesthesia and dentistry is zero risk, but in a healthy dog, healthy weight, healthy examination, all those things, the risk is negligible. The cost is crazy. I admit it. I own and run my own practice. But let's do the prevention as much as we can. And finally, there are two diets. I said earlier, kibble versus soft food makes no difference. There are two diets that do seem to have some influence, Hills TD and Purina Veterinary Health DH. I do see it. I can prove it if I need to clients. There are many cats and dogs who are on those diets who have had dental cleanings, who seem to not need the next cleaning as soon as we thought. And I'll end on, once you have one cleaning, say a dog at 5 years old, if it went 5 years without a cleaning, it is not unreasonable to expect that it will need another one at 3 years. And then the next cleaning will probably be at 2 years. And you see what I'm saying is, if we can't get that home care set up, and kudos to the caller to do that, the cleanings tend to start, once they happen, they seem to start happening more often. So it's really on the owner to, once you get your dog's or cat's teeth cleaned, to figure out some system, some combination of diet, preventative, and brushing to keep your dog or cat's dental health up to speed. There you go.
Dr. Jeff, I have the guilty pleasure of watching some vlogs on YouTube and one of the vlogs in particular that I watch, the person that is the proponent of that has a cat. and they're trying to brush their cat's teeth, and it ends up in a bloody mess. Do you recommend brushing a cat's teeth?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. You have to start early with a kitten. Older cats are not going to take it. Make sure you trim your cat's toes before you try.
Right.
Have someone with oven mitts there. I mean, let's be straight. Bad health, bad oral health, just like in people, can affect hearts, kidneys, and livers. So it is an important thing to think about and should be assessed every year annually with your vet. And, if you can, I talked about veterinary records before, ask your vet for their past pictures of your pet's teeth. Again, it's your file. You have the right to it. If your vet's not taking pictures, ask them why they're not. And in the room, have the assistant technician or vet hold the mouth open in such a way that you can get a good picture. You don't have to pull the jaw apart to get the picture. Just lift the lips on either side and get those pictures. And you'll prove to yourself what's working and what's not. And well, I'm going to stop on that. I think I've beaten that. Never mind. I've dealt with that subject. Better term.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Jeff is here until the top of the hour. If you have a pet question, again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I'm going to go brush my teeth. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. Our hour with the veterinarian continues. Dr. Jeff Goodall is here till the top of the hour to answer your questions about your furry friends, your pets. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Jeff, let's go right back to the phones. And we say hello to Cindy. Cindy, how are you? Cindy, are you there? One more time, Cindy, are you there? All right, we're going to stick you on hold, and Vanessa's going to dig into what's going on with the phone lines here. Let's welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, guys.
Your question for the doctor, please.
All right, so I have he's an Aussie Great Pyrenees. His dad was full-bred Aussie. His mom was Aussie and Great Pyrenees mix. So he's kind of stubborn by nature. He's just turned 2 yesterday. Up till about 6 months ago, he was just a goofball, wouldn't hurt a flea. And then he started being aggressive towards any dogs that he didn't grow up around on the street. Like if someone was walking their dog down the street, he didn't know. He wanted to get at them. He actually attacked a dog. Cost me $260 for their vet visit, unfortunately. But and now he is starting to do it towards people he doesn't know. He hasn't attacked a person yet, but he gets very standoffish, and he's actually growled pretty intensely at a guy. Not really in a mean dog way, but more of a fearful way, I find. I guess my question is, we neutered him at just under a year. It was about 11 months. And do you think that could cause the aggression? Or if not, what do you think?
No, neutering has, I'm going to interrupt you right there. This is a really common question. And no, neutering does not make a dog aggressive at all. In fact, typically it sort of reduces some of the possessive and protection aggression and redirected aggression. So just a quick question, friend. How old is the dog again? I'm sorry, I missed that. And what is the breed? Hello?
His dad. Hello?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, he just turned 2 yesterday. His dad was an Aussie. His mom was half Aussie, half Great Pyrenees.
Right. So it's the Great Pyrenees that's coming out. Aussies are usually pretty friendly, and Great Pyrenees are great dogs. But here's what I'm going to say. If you've already had an interaction with a aggressive incident resulting in veterinary care, and this is for the whole audience as well, then your dog has one strike, and it is more than possible that should a second incident occur, whether to a person or another pet, SPCA could become involved, and it's 2 strikes and you're out. So you, sir, without trying to tell you what to do, unfortunately, I kind of have to move on this and say you need to talk to your vet ASAP. What you need to get from your veterinarian is a referral to a veterinary behaviorist You could go to a behaviorist on your own, and I would recommend at the same time, because sometimes I know it's hard to get into your veterinarian, and you may be delayed on that, but talk to your veterinarian about a referral to, I can't remember her last name, but Dr. Veinotte. She's at Elmsdale. She's a great veterinarian, very compassionate, certified in a special interest of veterinary behavior. There is a behaviorist at the veterinary college, Dr. Overall. But you'll be waiting longer to get into her than to say Dr. Juanita. Had some really great experiences with both people. I'm not just talking veterinary behaviorist to get medication. You want to get in there for a plan of what you can do at home, how you can work with the puppy dog. All dogs are puppies to me, so forgive me for the wording. With your puppy dog on leash walking and with friends coming in the door and all that, because if it sounds like this is kind of a slow burn, right? The dog is circling around, getting a little bit more easily triggered, whether it's territorial possession, maybe redirected aggression. That is not the initial target of this response, but you need some assistance in a very timely manner to avoid any future accident. Having said that, yes, talk to a behaviorist. And there's some great ones, Litash, maybe Sublime Canine. Kirsten at, good Lord, I know her so well. She's a great person. Kristen at, just call my clinic front desk and ask them to give you the name of Kristen's contact information for her. She is the best non-veterinary person for troubled dogs. I've seen so many troubled dogs turned around by her. She's a gift to the world. If you're listening, Kristen, I'm not trying to blow smoke. Because, sir, these dogs, my previous associate vet, I loved her Pyrenees, but they have these little ticks. And you love the dog, but it's like a fear or anxiety aggression is what I think you've got here. And it can just, that's a big dog. And we could run into a problem real fast. And for all we know, I'll finish on this, I apologize, a dog that is experiencing fear or anxiety may be in pain. And so that's where the veterinary exam and consult comes in. It's not just necessarily for the referral. It's to make sure there's no concurrent, even though there's only 2 issues, and you're thinking of the neuter. I don't think that's fair, but there may be other issues that I'm not aware of that the vet may be easily understanding of that we can also deal with at the same time. So in other words, manage the dog, say it's pain. We manage the dog's discomfort. Then at the same time, while we're doing that, you have some guidelines from the veterinarian who can give you some basic stuff. Then you start talking to the Kristen Camerons or the Bob Ottenbrights at Litash for their input. Then we get to the behaviorist vet who might be able to talk about supplements and maybe some medications in a temporary way to get the edge off and go from there. But I'm not trying to fearmonger here, but this could turn really bad for your dog and yourself. But I advocate for the dog. Let's get this dog the attention and treatment it needs as soon as possible.
Thanks for the call, Mike, and best of luck. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phone lines, Dr. Jeff, and welcome Cindy to the show. Cindy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. Your question for the doctor, please.
I'm calling about feline herpes, and how do I take care of it with my cat's eye? Very liquidy or droopy, like what remedies do I use? And is there another word to say it, because I feel uncomfortable telling people my cat has feline herpes?
Okay, well, there's a lot there. So I'm presuming you've had a veterinary diagnosis of feline herpes virus?
Correct.
Okay, and they've eliminated chlamydia and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and have they talked to you? So treatments would be sometimes topical antibiotics, such as Tobrex, fusidic acid, I think it's called isosol, terramycin's another one. Sometimes we use topical antiviral medications, though those can be a little expensive. Almost all these cats are supplemented with something called lysine or L-lysine, and that's a powder you put on the food daily. There may be some evidence that probiotics such as Fortiflora reduce the severity of outbreaks. There is some discussion of vaccination. That's another discussion for another day. Famiciclovir is what's in my memory for antiviral medications. No, there is no other name for it. It's not you just say feline herpes virus and it's not contagious to people. That's the discussion, if that is necessary. But in the end, it's a lifelong condition. Typically, you can manage it. Most cases in a healthy cat, the eye inflammation, the nasal discharge is self-limiting and can resolve within less than a month. And many cats are actually affected with the virus and don't show signs. They don't have any clinical evidence of it. And yet, if they bump into another cat who's maybe prone or has an immune depression, they can then pass it over. So that's where the lysine comes in to help with boost the immune system and go from there. Some cats who have permanent scarring, especially the nasal scarring, do need on-again, off-again oral or injectable antibiotics to help with it. But once it gets in your cat, it can be very difficult. It's always there, if you will, just like herpes in people. So stressful situations can bring it back out. Travel, boarding, your veterinarian should be aware of it anytime your cat comes in for surgery or illness, and go from there. But it sounds like your vet may not have given you all those options. So topical antibiotics as needed, maybe oral if absolutely necessary, famiciclovir, L-lysine, probiotics like Fortiflora, and go from there.
Best of luck, Cindy. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Jeff's here right after the break. Towards the top of the hour with Dr. Jeff Goodall. If you have a pet-related question, if you'd like some advice from the veterinarian, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We'll go right back to the phone lines and say hello to Owen. Owen, how are you?
Not too shabby.
Your question, please.
Question for Dr. Jeff, please. Actually, two. One, Dr. Jeff, okay, there seems to be a number of stock market exchanges that are buying up veterinarian clinics. And I can understand it from the aspect that if you take the synergies and the buying power, that they could get drugs cheaper. But in your experience, okay, have they?
No, that's the problem, my friend. I'm sorry to sound so dismissive. You're very astute to pick up on that, and most clients can figure that out, right? The whole idea is you bundle, let's just say Jeff Goodall becomes the mega veterinarian of Halifax and he buys up 10 clinics. He will more than likely, as a good business person, leverage my buying power with the suppliers to get a better rate. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
And then you'd like to think that they being the Goodall veterinary conglomerate mogul company, would then reduce fees to clients. And that's kind of where you're going. And that's what should happen, you would think. No, from my understanding, like, again, you have to remember, I'm a single practice owner. We are a fairly large practice. I'm really blessed with, that situation. So we do have a little bit of buying power, but compared to, say, a 1 or 2 person clinic. But you certainly cannot compete against those big guys. And no, one of the things that from my understanding, I don't want to put words in the corporate or franchise clinics, because there are now 2 different types of corporate, right? There's the corporately owned and then there's the franchise clinics. And those franchise clinics are controlled by an overriding company that I would argue probably, I can't speak directly, recommend a certain supplier over another. And no, they then usually together set their fees, even though that's not technically legal. They probably do unofficially call each other up and say, this is how we're going to do this. And the corporation then keeps the price where it was before they negotiated the cheaper cost and that spread then goes right up the chain to the coffers of the corporate. So that's, I think, the answer you're talking to, and that is my understanding. I apologize if there's a corporate person listening and I have it wrong. Reach out to me by email and let me know the difference. But one thing I can say, and I don't want to bang my own drum, is recently a company came to us and said, hey, we are going to do, if you buy this much product, we will take the price off by this. So I literally, that's the one asset of being a private, is I then turned to my office manager and said, okay, when that price comes in, our price will drop slightly. We're going to pass that right on to the consumer, because let's be straight, we're doing okay. I don't need the extra money. I don't have equipment I need to buy or reinvestment into the practice I absolutely have to do right now. That could change if I did have money I have to spend on equipment. But right now, my office manager and I met and said, nope, there's nothing on the cards. Profitability is reasonable. Let's just pass that reduced price back on to the client with our usual markup. Let's be straight, there's a markup there. I will say this, the private company, private clinics do have obligations to their banks. And I did run into this years ago where a bank, my then bank, basically said, oh, you're not profitable enough. And if you're not profitable enough, we're dropping you as a client. You got 90 days to go and find another bank. And I was like, hold on, I don't understand this. And they were saying, well, no, I haven't missed a payment, sir, Mr. Big Banker. I haven't, my mortgage is paid, my lease is paid, all these things. Oh, no, we don't care about that. You're not profitable enough. We think you're a risk business. So that's the pressures that are on both private and corporate. There you go.
Well, I thank you for your answer. And if I may indulge, two quick questions. What do you think about short-haired pointers?
Absolutely enjoyable dogs. I love them. Good health, typically, lots of fun, high energy. Be prepared to be chasing them around the yard if you don't go to training. Can't overstate the importance of training. And just goofy as hell. Gotta love them. I love all dogs pretty much, except those budding chihuahuas. I will pass on those.
Thanks, Owen.
And just one more quick question.
Sure, quickly.
Okay. If there's a very retired, if there's a retired service dog, maybe the owner has died or something like that, is there any way that you could register to get one of those?
What a good question. And I don't know the answer. I'm not going to take up time on the air to say any more than that, but start Googling on that, because there has to be, doesn't there? Like Elder Dog Canada is a great little organization. Maybe they would be a point to start with, or SPCA. Give them a call, email them. Let's move on that. That's a great idea.
And there's a number of veterans organizations here in Nova Scotia and across the country that likely can answer that question for you too as well, Owen. Great questions, Owen. I appreciate it. Dr. Jeff, we got one more call. Let's see if we can squeeze it in before the top of the hour. Hello, Dana.
Hey, what's up, Todd? How are you doing?
Good.
So I have a dog who has been eating crazy amounts of chocolate for the last 5 years. Hasn't died from it. Usually it's followed by bouts of runny stomach. Is there any potential health issues I'm going to have to worry about down the line? Because he's constantly getting it, but he hasn't really gotten sick from it yet. And I'm just curious to what can happen in the future.
What an unusual question. The short answer is chocolate is toxic to dogs, period. It's got caffeine and theobromine in it. If your dog is eating, I don't quite understand how we can't block the dog from getting the chocolate. And then you just have to. I don't quite understand how that's happening. I'm not criticizing your care. But also, too, some chocolates have xylitol in it. Xylitol is extremely dangerous to cat dogs and can cause sudden low blood pressure or blood sugar. And I want to be clear, chocolate toxicity is rarely fatal. That's kind of where you're going. But over time, I guess chronic exposure, which I've never seen a study on that because nobody would put a dog through it, dogs from the theobromine typically develop vomiting, diarrhea, and chronic long-term pancreatitis, and that's going to get your dog. The fat and the sugars cause pancreatic issues, pancreatic inflammation, and you're going to get the runs and all that stuff, which is kind of what you're talking about. But pancreatitis is a tough disorder to treat. It's painful. It's a special diet for life, medication sometimes, specialty supplements. just don't let your dog into it. The caffeine just winds them up and causes elevated heart rates. And dark chocolate now, I'm talking milk chocolate is rarely tabled, dark chocolate, by the time some animals are seen at the veterinarian or made to vomit at home, it can be pretty bad. I don't quite understand how you just can't stop your dog from getting to the chocolate. That's the short answer. And you just need to do that.
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. I learned stuff in this segment every time we have it. And Dr. Jeff, thank you very much to you. And we'll chat next month.
Take care. Thanks for having me on.
That is Dr.
Be safe, everybody. Be kind.
That is Dr. Jeff Goodall. He's here every last Thursday of every month to answer your pet-related questions. We had a busy show today. It was nice to see the mayor sit in the chair for an hour and answer the questions. And I know that many of you have comments with some of his answers. And we will, of course, open up our telephone lines tomorrow for our traditional Friday free-for-all. Often imitated, never duplicated. And I look forward to our conversations then. We have a busy show planned for you tomorrow, as we do every Friday here on the show. Do you know that they're perhaps going to try and pass some legislation at the provincial legislature, enacting a law that would recognize Windsor as the birthplace of hockey? It seems to be where most people suggest hockey was born. Now, there's obviously counter-arguments to that. And David Jones, who's an educator and a local historian, is taking exception to that. We'll have a conversation with him tomorrow. I know you're looking forward to that. Claudia Chender, the leader of the opposition, was on earlier this week, but we're bringing her back tomorrow because she was downright angry yesterday at something that the Premier said. The Premier said that the opposition can keep the session going as long as they want. She called that an absolute lie. We'll dig into that as part of the show tomorrow. Tim Powers will be here with our focus on Ottawa and on new polling numbers showing a 15-point lead now for Mark Carney over Pierre Poilievre. And Alistair will be here along with Cecil, our regular weather and sports segments to wrap up the week. Until then, everybody, thanks to Vanessa Van Inez. Outstanding work as always on the other side of the glass. Can't do it without her. I really and honestly mean that. Cannot do it without her. Get out there and enjoy what Nova Scotia has to offer. We're having a warm day today. It looks like things are starting to melt. It looks like the weekend's going to be nice too, so maybe a chance to light up the barbecue. Wouldn't that be something? Until tomorrow, everybody, be well, and like Dr. Jeff said, be kind to one another.